Hello and welcome to the Resource Nexus podcast. Let's talk about the biggest game changers in the college basketball transfer portal right now. It's already heating up and we've got some key names worth discussing. Today we're breaking it all down using a crucial metric, adjusted efficiency. You can check out all our content and updates at theresourcenexus.com. We've ranked the top transfers based on their ADJeff rating, factoring in things like pace, competition level, and overall production. This list is just the beginning. As more players enter the portal in the coming weeks, we'll keep updating the rankings. So, stay tuned for new names, big moves, and deeper dives into these numbers in future episodes, but there are plenty to talk about right now that could help your team. Now, let's talk tiers. Owen Freeman, Malik Reneau, and Donovan Dent. They're in a class of their own right now. The gap between them and the rest of the field is fairly significant. After that, we've got a second tier of players. In the 3.0 to 4.0 ADJeff range, still impact guys, but not quite at the current top level. Breaking it down, Owen Freeman, Iowa, with a 4.6 ADJeff rating. No surprise here. Freeman stands alone at the top. His impact is undeniable, and in a different system, I think his defense will hold up even better. He's posted an elite block rate over both seasons, and while some question his defense, I'd argue the real issue has been the players around him in the Iowa system, which has never valued defense under McCaffrey. He's consistently had the highest defensive ratings on his team by about 8 to 10 points, which tells me he's not the problem. He's the only saving grace from it being even worse. There's a lot of potential here moving forward, in my opinion, the way he blocks shots. He's committed to Creighton, so I know he will have every chance in that drop system to do what Ryan Kalkbrenner did defensively. I think this will work out well, and if he's not a dominant rim defender, he's going to at least be part of decent defenses. On offense, what he can do is unquestionable. Reneau, Indiana, 4.5. Another guy proving he belongs in that top tier. He's got the recruiting pedigree and should be one of the most sought-after players in this cycle. Along with Freeman, they're both projected top 30 overall players. That's more a reflection of what's graduating and the overall scarcity in the market. You'll see what I mean when we drop our full player rankings in the preseason. As for Reneau, he's averaged 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists with a 25 PER in the Big Ten the last 2 seasons. I've heard some say he isn't good, and I question. Do they even understand basketball? Donovan Dent, New Mexico, has joined these two as 4.0 plus ranked players, coming in at 4.2. As a guard in the MWC, you have to be incredible to post a number like this, and he is posting 20 points and 6 assists for an NCAA tournament top 40 team. He's going to be one of the best guards in the game, certainly, and a huge pickup for anyone that lands him. Now, let's get into that second tier. These are the guys landing in the 3.0 to 4.0 range, high impact players, but just a step below in terms of overall statistical impact. Dailyn Swain, Xavier, is pretty unassuming statistically, but clocks in at a 3.9. Swain doesn't jump off the page, but he's a very solid player who does what he does versus elite competition. Not hitting threes makes him a slightly weird fit, but he has a .607 true shooting, so scoring efficiently isn't an issue. He does that and rebounds and assists well as well. Dishon Jackson, Iowa State, 3.9. Maybe this is a controversial one, considering he only played about 19 minutes a game, but he's been a 27-minute-a-game player last year and well over a 3.0 on a top 100 type of team at Charlotte. Started at Washington State prior to that. You can't argue with the impact, 23% in the Big 12, helping to anchor one of the best defenses. I think he will be highly undervalued for the actual impact he can make from a value perspective. Nick Davidson, Nevada, 3.8, a well-rounded player who can make a difference wherever he lands after averaging 16, 6 and 3 at 6'9". Bennett Stirtz, Drake. Stirtz has already committed to Iowa following his coach. He could be one of the most interesting prospects on the board transitioning from D2 to the MVC to the Big Ten. I've been asked how I thought he would do, and I just said solid. Internally, I thought probably about a 3.5 guy. Frankly, a month ago, his numbers were looking terrible just because Drake had played a terrible 230 type schedule at that point, but the strength of schedule picked up the last month, about 60 spots, and his numbers now are basically where I thought they should be. The PER came down from 30, but still held up to a solid 27, and his real superpower is playing 39-plus minutes a game. I think nationally he will be a little overrated, but it's clear he's a solid, steady top 80 to 100 type of player by the model. That tracks with what I would have expected. Josh Dix, Iowa 3.7, another strong piece from Iowa's roster. If they had tried to run it back, this team could have been formidable. His main value will be elite three-point shooting, making 2 threes a game at 42+%. 14 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists at Iowa translate anywhere. Mackenzie Mgbako, 3.7, Indiana. He gets no bump in the model, but anyone from Indiana I think probably deserves a bump. It was a dysfunctional offense with no shooting or space. Mgbako had to basically be a three-point ace on the team, and that's not his role. Oscar Clough, South Dakota State, 3.6. This is a player who started on an NCAA tournament team in the Pac-12 last year that everyone slept on. He came up with a 2.9 last year and 245th in our model in the preseason, which was higher than anywhere else. He dominated the Summit League, as you would expect a 6'11" player with his pedigree to do, with a 35 PER, and should be one of the top sought-after big men in the portal. It's even possible his dominance wasn't captured enough in my model, but it was weak competition. Quincy Ballard, Wichita State. Ballard has lived up to the Power 5 pedigree from Florida State and really come into his own as a 7-footer dominating in the AAC. He's nearly a double-double guy at 10 points, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks. He should be heading back to the P5 now. Amani Hansberry, West Virginia, 3.6. The numbers don't jump off the page, but he averages 10 and 6 in the Big 12 versus a brutal SOS fairly efficiently. Adrian Woolley, Kennesaw State, 3.6. 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, basically in an undervalued. He's a solid player, shooting 42% from 3-on-2, makes a game. I think he would help any team in the country. Nick Pringle, SEC center. Can I interest anyone in a multi-year starting SEC center? Nick Pringle is back on the market at a 3.6 rating. He's solid. A team like UNC could have used him this year, certainly. Christopher Tilley, Santa Clara, 3.4. Tilley is a true 7-footer who is averaging 13 points in 20 minutes a game versus a stronger schedule than most realize. He's highly productive and efficient. He can shoot a few threes at 31%, but overall his value comes from a .63% true shooting. The rebounding and block rate are lower than you'd like, but he has value in a nearly +20 net rating. Barrington Hargris, UC Riverside, 3.3, averaging 20 points and 4 assists in a better-than-expected Big West. He will be highly valued this portal cycle. The three-point shooting is slightly below average at 33% though. Isaiah Coleman, Seton Hall, 3.3 rating. Hall had to step into a bigger role this year with the exodus last year and comported himself well. The three-point percentage is a little disappointing, but for a high-usage guard getting all the game plan on a bad team, he did a decent job sucking up that usage and being productive. With more help, he should be better. Obi Egbeam, Wyoming, 3.2. It appears he's headed to Baylor, so he will finally be in a winning situation. Averaging 17 points and 3 assists and shooting nearly 3 makes a game at 44% from 3. This is a big get. A dependable player who can hold his own. Devin Cambridge, Texas Tech, 3.2. He didn't play last year, so these numbers are from his previous season. This is exactly the kind of player who gets overlooked nationally. If you're looking for value, he could be a steal. Magoon Gwath, San Diego State, 3.3. He averages 8 points and 5 rebounds, but most of his value is in the 2.6 blocks. In defense, he contributes. He's a slim 7-footer, but he will be valued on the transfer market because of the way he impacts your defense. He also makes 37% of his low-volume threes, making 17 on the year, enough to keep teams honest, though. Jeremiah Wilkinson, Cal, 3.2. A player to watch. With 3 years of eligibility remaining, he could get lots of interest after averaging 15 points per game. The problem is he doesn't contribute much else. Michael Rataj, Oregon State, 3.1. Oregon State did well in a high major league this year, and as such, Rataj is likely on his way back to the power conferences, I expect. Elliot Cadeau, UNC, 3.1. This is a player that I've always thought was overrated, but he comes in at a decent value this year. He's still problematic at his size and with his lack of shooting. I think UNC will actually improve in this position, or should. Brock Harding, Iowa, 3.1. Another key piece for the Hawkeyes last year, 9 points, 5 assists, 40% from 3. He will likely be undervalued. He even comes in undervalued in my model, probably, but the defense is a question. Malachi Smith, Dayton, 3.1. 10 points, 5 assists, 16 PER in the A10, 38% on a lower volume of threes, but I think his reputation probably exceeds his actual value. Someone will pay him. Dayton's strength of schedule was better than you typically see in the A10. As for the rest of the players in this range, they're all solid contributors but project more as lower-end starters or high-level sixth men. The most notable is probably Isaac McNeely, Virginia, 2.9. I think most will overvalue him, but as more of a role player than a first option, I think he could fit perfectly on lots of teams. Miles Rice, 2.9. He took the Indiana haircut I spoke about earlier, where everyone looks worse in that system with no shooting or space. That said, while he was better at Washington State last year with a 3.3, I think you split the difference, and this is about right. Jason Sanan, Arizona State, 2.8. Sanan was a highly recruited freshman who started the season on a tear but cooled off. He's already committed to St. John's and will bring some quality 37% three-point shooting, but there isn't much else past averaging 12 that he has shown yet. I wouldn't rule him out being better, though. Deaton Thomas Jr., UNLV, 2.8. Yeah, his numbers look solid until you realize he's playing nearly the entire game. Then you notice the lack of rebounding and limited three-point volume, and those things start to stand out negatively. Vassian Alette, TCU, 2.8. 11 points, 4 rebounds, and 3.5 assists in the Big 12 sounds great, but then you see it. It being the .43% true shooting. He probably needs to take his talents back to the Sun Belt. And that's a wrap for today's breakdown. We've covered a lot of transfers, and as always, we'll keep you updated as more names hit the portal. If you want to stick around a little longer, I'm going to talk about the ranking system and things I have observed. For years, I've relied on player efficiency rating as a key metric to evaluate basketball player performance I've built the ranking system off of. My observations date back to at least 2010, when the transfer landscape was vastly different from today. Back then, player movement was relatively rare, and most transfers involved athletes moving down a level in search of playing time. These players often had limited minutes at their previous schools, making PER a useful tool to estimate their potential impact at a lower level from a per-possession perspective. Sure, there were some high-profile cases like Robert Vaden following Mike Davis to a new program or players dismissed from teams, but most transfers were about opportunity rather than upward mobility. That trend started shifting with players like Luke Hancock successfully moving up the competitive ladder. But because transfers had to sit out a season, it was tough to isolate how much of their improvement was due to natural development versus adjusting to a higher level of competition. That extra year of practice against stronger competition meant they often weren't the same players they had been 2 years prior. Observing PER trends over time. Over the years, I've analyzed thousands of cases, with most of my data coming from the last 4 seasons, the era of free transfer movement fueled by NIL dollars, as transfer rules evolved, first with an increasing number of waivers and now with full-on free agency. Mobility became instant. And that lack of continuity? In some ways, it's actually smooth transitions. It's easier to get up to speed when every team is breaking in new players, but the core pattern remains. Players transferring up in competition tend to experience a decline in PER, while those moving down see an increase. Based on my observations spanning 15 years, moving from a mid-major to a Power 5 school typically results in an average PER drop of about 5 points for high-usage players. Conversely, transferring down from a P5 to a mid-major, think AAC, WCC, A10, often leads to a 5-point increase. This pattern is especially noticeable among guards and wings, though big men tend to transition a little better. The variance among mid-majors. Even within the mid-major tier, the competition levels vary widely. Some players from lower-tier conferences thrive at higher levels, Johnny Broome, for example, while others, like Jordan Minor, struggle to replicate their prior success. The lower the starting point, the greater the variance, largely due to strength of schedule. One trend I've noticed, having size for your position helps make the jump. Over time, I've observed a strong correlation between SOS and PER fluctuations, reinforcing the idea that competition level plays a significant role in performance shifts. Stronger competition limits per possession impact. That's just a fact at this point. Sure, there are outliers like Cam Spencer, who jumped from the bottom without missing a beat, but even the best, like Carlick Jones, typically see a PER haircut. Most guys either see less playing time or take on a lower usage role. The data doesn't lie. Correlation isn't always causation in a single case. But when the same trend emerges across hundreds of examples over many years, it's far from random. Again and again, I've seen a consistent 5 to 7 point PER swing when players move between competitive tiers. The pattern holds across leagues and even within single seasons. When a player's defensive SOS ranks among the toughest in the country, their PER declines. A softer schedule? That inflates efficiency metrics. Looking at transfers from the A10, WCC, and AAC into the P5, the difference is clear. The numbers speak for themselves, and the impact of competition level on PER is undeniable. Tiering the conferences. These trends closely mirror conference net rankings, budgets, and overall resources. Here's how I classify them moving forward. Tier 1 to 5, power conferences, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, Pac-12. Tier 6 to 8, high major 1, a 10, MWC, AAC. Tier 9 to 11, high major 2, WCC, MVC, CUSA. Tier 12 to 16, mid-major, Ivy, Southern, Big West, Sun Belt, WAC. Tier 16 to 32, low major, everyone else. Of course, there's variance from season to season, but over time, the hierarchy aligns with financial resources. Even with a conference like the AAC underachieving relative to its budget, the overall structure remains stable. The high major tier is competitive, but the main separator is financial investment. The low major tier has some internal separation too, but for our purposes, anything below the mid-major level is difficult to project. Power conferences down to high major tend to project well because they maintain a consistent SOS from year to year, making PER analysis reliable. But at the mid-major and low major levels, conference strength can fluctuate by 5 to 10 spots in a given season. Without that stability, predicting performance gets tricky. The top 10 conferences, much more static. The evolving transfer landscape has provided more data than ever before, and the trends remain consistent. Competition level has a direct and measurable impact on PER. NIL continues to reshape transfer behavior, primarily encouraging upward movement. Fewer high-minute rotation players are transferring down. That makes it even more critical to understand these statistical patterns. Whether evaluating a rising mid-major star or a P5 role player looking for a fresh start, adjusted efficiency remains one of the best tools we have for assessing how performance will translate across different levels of competition. Alright, that's a wrap for today. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you got some good insights. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with anyone who'd find it useful. And don't forget to check out theresourcenexus.com for more in-depth analysis. Until next time, check you later.
Cool. Guess we'll see you around.
All right, check you later.
Bye.
Wait, man, why are you always such a dork, man?
What are you talking
Check you
about?
later. Check you later.